Hello, and hello, everybody. Welcome back for another episode, If Not Now Wen. I am so excited to invite my friend, Kevin Parakkattu, to join me in today's show. Kevin, he is a partner at Plug and Play Ventures, where he leads the firm's commerce, media, and consumer investment. In his 5 years of investing at PMP, Kevin has led seed and earlier stage investment in over 30 more companies. He also sat at Innovation Advisory Board at National Retail Federation. Prior to PMP, Kevin was an investment analyst at Centripetal Capital and a co-founder of pure play consumer and apparel businesses. With that, my friend, I am so beyond excited. Please join me to welcome Kevin to the show. So Kevin, we are so excited to have you join us today. What an honor. So tell us, where is all the magic begin for you, Kevin?
Yeah, I mean, first off, thank you, Wen, for having me on the podcast. No, it's an absolute pleasure to be here. The magic started for me in New York. I'm originally from New York. My parents are from South India. They emigrated here in the late 80s. And then I was born and then, kind of went from New York to California and then moved to Texas about 2 years ago.
Wow. Exciting journey. How does that feel like growing up in an immigrant family in a fancy city like New York?
Yeah, so we grew up outside in New York City in a town called Rockland County.
Okay.
Pretty kind of sleepy town, like local suburb, and for me, I was one of the few Indian kids in class. My class has about maybe 250 kids. Asians in general was maybe 10 or so kids. And then, the rest of the class was mainly Caucasian and others. So we were always the minority in that. My parents, when they first moved to New York, they moved to the South Bronx. And New Yorkers who are listening know the South Bronx is notoriously rough. And when they had children, they decided to kind of go to a safe place. So that's where I grew up. So, I think early on in life, it was kind of an identity, like, who am I? What do I mean? Like, am I...
What did you find out?
It's still an ongoing journey, I think, as one does. But for me, at that early time, it was, at least in the beginning, it was all about trying to fit in, try to be like everyone else. I had an accent. We mentioned before, English was not my first language.
I can never tell. By the way.
So I did ESL, English as a second language, for 8 years. Just kind of going through that process and trying to find yourself throughout that. Like, first it was try to become like everybody else. Kind of have the same interests as everyone else, kind of shun away from your own culture, et cetera, et cetera. And then there was kind of a moment, I think, in high school where you just kind of realized that, your background, the things that you grow up with is the beauty that you have. And that you trying to become like everyone else is a disservice to almost your heritage and what makes you shine.
So beautiful.
So that was, I think, a profound learning early in life to lean in to the culture, to your own kind of quirks, if you will, and become the person that you are. And then people will embrace you because you're different. And the difference in you is what makes you unique and exciting to talk to.
That's so beautiful. That's one of the reasons I love Austin, Texas. Keep Austin weird. And the way that I think about this is, I'm weird. You are weird. She's weird. We all weird in our own unique ways. And what you said is so touching that, it's especially the more we can lean into who we are, that weirdness, that uniqueness. And that's how we are here shining our light, share our gift.
I love it.
So with that, Kevin, what happened next? How do you think about the career choice as you going to college?
Yeah. I think when you meet a lot of venture capitalists, they're kind of shining stars from day one, or it seems like it whenever I get to meet them. They went to the top institutions and then went to the top banks, et cetera. My story is a bit different. My parents, my dad works in the New York City subway, in kind of one of their warehouses. My mom's a nurse. And growing up, my biggest aspiration was maybe to run a restaurant or stuff like that. Kind of more small business focused. And therefore, throughout high school to kind of pay the bills and so forth, I just cleaned tables, I waited tables, etc. And there was a moment in high school where I was working at a French restaurant, and the owner of the restaurant sat me down and he said kind of, what do you want to do with your life? And I was like, oh, I mean, like maybe become like a restaurant manager or, run a laundromat or something like that, something kind of local. And he's like, I think that you have far more to achieve than that. And then not that there's anything kind of wrong with that. It's just that I think that you have potential in other aspects. How much do you care about kind of the SAT and stuff and other kind of standardized exams? And at that point, it was, not at all. And so what he would do is he would, in between kind of stacking dishes and getting customer plates and going back to the kitchen, in the kitchen, he would ask me SAT questions.
Wow. Why would he care? If you don't mind ask directly. That's so incredible.
And I actually don't know why he developed an affinity towards me. It was just, he was the owner. He was doing very well for himself.
Yeah.
But, I think he saw some potential in me early on.
Incredible that you already have such a mentor in such an early age.
Yeah. So he alone, I think, made a seismic shift in life.
Yeah.
Because I started caring about, school and all of that.
So you didn't ask your SAT question while you clean dishes,
exactly.
Wiping tables.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, what is 3 plus 35?
Exactly.
More complex than that, of course.
Yeah, the one that I remember was there's a SAT word called brouhaha, which is similar to chaos and stuff like that. And that was one of the classic ones. Like, what is brouhaha? And I'd be like, this restaurant. So that really started it. Luckily, I did good enough on the SATs and got better at school, and then ended up getting a full ride into college.
But I wonder, just through his interaction with you, what was the one moment that changed your mind about from not caring at all, but now you start thinking academically?
I think he just he made me kind of open up my eyes to what my life could have been. So at that time, I would ride my bike to the bus stop, take the bus stop to work. Work until 2 a.m., then, go home. And then, if it was a school week, then start school at 6 a.m. and stuff like that.
Oh.
While my end goal was, whatever it may be, maybe to become a kind of local small business owner, the path to get there is backbreaking, quite literally. And I think he made me realize that for him, becoming a restaurant owner was kind of an ends to a means. That he was a kind of a French immigrant, French and Haitian immigrant that came without a degree, and therefore he had to work his way up through a restaurant to ultimately own his French restaurant. But me, as a child, of immigrants, have just a natural opportunity of growing up in the States. And before you kind of explore some of these things, you should see what your potential is before kind of going within the lens of what you know.
So beautiful. So as if he sees a younger version of himself in you, the one with more possibility and opportunity given where you are at the moment in your life.
I think so. And it was profound. So, he helped me kind of, and not just him, right? I mean, there's, your parents, I have an older brother, your whole community kind of shows you the potentials that sometimes you don't see in yourself.
Incredible.
So I was able to go to school for free, which was incredible at the time. My family, didn't have crazy wealth or anything like that. But in school, I think I went to school in New York City at a school called Baruch College, City University of New York. And everyone there wanted to become an investment banker. That was the dream. That was the Willy Wonka pass, if you will.
Right in New York.
Yeah.
Like 2 blocks on Wall Street.
Yeah, exactly. So, you'd wear a suit to class.
That's aggressive.
Yeah.
Freshman?
Yeah, because kids always had internships or, some of the school clubs even, the Wall Street clubs would require you to wear a suit. So a lot of times you'd end up wearing it. So, just like everyone else, I was like, oh, I guess I want to be an investment banker too. So what I did kind of during those 3 years was try to pack my resume to what I thought, kind of what I, learned and unlearned from high school was I did what everyone else, thought was best, but it wasn't necessarily best for me. And I think the point was that I worked towards that and ended up getting what's called a super day, which is like the last round of interviews at every major investment bank. And during 1 week, I had six or so super days. And then the following week is when you get, if you got into anything. And then it was 6 kind of rejections back to back at all kind of the name brands that you and I are aware of.
How was that experience?
So that
shaping
was
you that moment.
Yes, that was definitely a low point. Probably one of the lowest points, right? Because you kind of work your way up to something.
Understand.
And then a third party, whatever it may be, kind of, rejects you. And rejection hurts, whatever form it may be. So it came through that process, but I think, it's almost a cliche, but sometimes your lows are meant there so that you can rise up from that. And what came out of that was, 2 friends and I, sheerly with kind of zero options in place, decided to start a company. So what we did was we focused on custom clothing. We allowed students to design their own clothing, potentially use their college logos, if we had a royalty agreement with the respective university. And it was entirely online, and it was student friendly, et cetera. We were competing with Custom Ink and a few others that were in the space, and we built a great business. We didn't have to touch inventory at all. Essentially, what we did was we allowed students to design their own clothing, and then we'd place out an order to a bunch of screen printers and digital printers, and then whoever got the order first would take it and then run with it, and then they would actually do the delivery. And so
brilliant business model, almost like drop shipping, but even more customized.
And basically, the moment was that there was within New York State, there were thousands of screen printers, small businesses that are in strip malls, et cetera, that are not digital native at all. Mm-hmm. So we became the digital native bridge between the online consumer and their brick and mortar front.
So you shifting from a moment, realize, wow, like investment banker maybe not going to work out. You shift immediately to entrepreneurship.
Yeah. So and what happened was during those interviews, I would just talk about tech. I would just talk about technology and latest and greatest and what I'm seeing in the market.
Yeah.
And almost consistently, the last stage of interviews would be, are you just doing this to eventually go into VC or technology in general? And I'm like, no, absolutely not. I love, term sheets and M&A and all the other things that are involved in that field. And no one believed me. I don't think I believed me. And
did you know what you wanted at the time?
Outside
of interview?
I think I didn't have that level of introspection that I, been able to build over the years. It was, just thinking that this is what everyone else is doing, and this is the key to success.
Yeah.
And therefore, if I want to do something later in the fields that I like, I gotta kind of put in my time.
Understood.
And at that time in the New York VC startup ecosystem was incredibly friendly, and that's where I'd spend my after hours. And they still are. I mean, you would just go to New York meetups, you'd meet kind of entrepreneurs that were building unicorns, but they were incredibly friendly and willing to give up their time.
So while you dress up those fancy, you still get all the amazing meetings and interviews. On the other hand, you also go to those chill coffee shop or meetups and meeting with founders and see what they're building. And what was a moment that you in your mind thinking, you know what, I'm going to do this. Like, this is actually what excites me.
Yeah. So, I mean, it was myself and then 2 co-founders at the time. We were just kind of with zero options and talking about how expensive it is to get a hoodie in the local school store. A hoodie at the college bookstore was $80 or $100.
Totally.
And it didn't make any sense if you were a college student and trying to buy something like that. And we thought there must have been a better way. And what we found was that that hoodie costs $1 to make.
Not $1 to make a hoodie.
Yeah. If you order at the quantity that a school does, several, in order in bulk, it's about $1 or so for the product.
Oh my God.
And then what you're paying, let's say if it costs $80, the $79 is the school logo, the operational costs, all the things that, et cetera, right? And you are taking on the costs that are fixed.
Yeah.
So in that time, it was let's develop something entirely online.
That's so exciting.
It's not like we have anything to do this summer anyway.
Oh, that's over the summer break.
Yeah. So we developed that over the kind of over the next 2 years or so.
Wow.
And we built the business and it ran on its own. You know, like students would order. We wouldn't really have to touch anything. And then it would go out and screen printers and get delivered to them.
Incredible.
All we had to do was just get on different organizations and stuff.
You share, right?
Yeah, to share the idea. And the business did well. So I think that was my first realize and kind of confidence in myself and building and working with others on a shared vision. Well, what essentially happened next was that a lot of VCs were kind of interested, and I developed relationships over the years. And I ended up joining one of the venture capital firms because kind of the trajectory that we were going was more small business. Essentially, we were doing, around 7 or 8 figures top line. And then we were doing about 30 to 40% net margins.
Pretty nice.
Yeah. So, we didn't have any staff, and it was just us three. And, like it could have been a great, passive income, if you will.
Yeah.
But you're 22 and you want to take on different challenges and so forth. So I ended up selling my equity back to the founders, and they ended up running the business, and then eventually kind of doing their own thing as well. And then for me, it was trying this whole VC thing that was always on my brain and something that I was incredibly interested by.
So that was your path after graduation.
Yeah. So I went to a firm in Connecticut. It was a small fund, it was a $150 million fund called Centripetal Capital. And kind of similar to in high school where the restaurant owner found interest in me. The same thing there. It was this managing partner, Steve Crust, as well as his partner, Jeff Broadleaf. And the reason I met Jeff was because I would sneak into the Harvard Club, which is Harvard University's club in New York City. Just to meet people because, I wanted to meet like really accomplished alumni. And Jeff was one of those people that actually had gone to Harvard, and I just met him by being in the place. So met Jeff, met Steve, and they kind of guided me into the operational and kind of valuation frameworks that would fuel the venture capital career that I have today.
Was it everything you wanted it? Or was it different than what you thought it was?
It was incredibly exciting. So that specific job was focused a lot on kind of distressed venture companies. So, we always talk about kind of unicorns and so forth, and the company's doing well.
Right.
But there's kind of this whole other side of the coin of venture capital.
Tell us more.
Which is that, a lot of companies will raise on sky-high valuations.
Especially now, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And then not be able to reach their metrics.
So what happened after that?
So what happens is what's called generally a recap, a recapitalization, whereby let's say a company, let's say hypothetically a company raised 20 million at a 60 million post. And their metrics, let's say now are $1 million top line. They're probably not worth more than 20 million, depending on what they do, but they're valued at 60 million.
Oh my God, that's a huge gap.
Right.
How was that? Do I hear it correctly?
Yeah. So what happens is basically different investors come in and they assign a valuation to the company, and then the existing investors get diluted down to sometimes single-digit percentages.
Wow.
And it's very risky for the new investor to come in and do that because it could just not be a good company.
Yeah.
It could have been a company, and we're seeing that a lot now in the market. And same thing kind of, 7 years ago, where, you come in and then it could just be that the executive team didn't really they raised before there was product market fit, or they kind of had an amazing pedigree before that, and therefore it was kind of blind money going in. Whatever.
So that's a bad thing, right? You don't want to raise too much money or too early before you need it.
I think that was a huge learning that I've had over the years, is that fundraising events are not necessarily, should not be taken dramatically. Like, oh, wow, look at this company and its valuation. Look how much they raised. What ends up happening is that it allows business to continue and grow, but it's not the end, right? And I think early on in my career, I'd get super excited when, let's say, a portfolio company would raise a lot of money. But again, that allows business to continue. And while there should be some celebration, it's not, look at me, I should be kind of the front page of every news now. Because, like I said, there's oftentimes another side to the coin, where if growth metrics are not met, then oftentimes those founders have to reevaluate what they do in the company as well as what the company is worth.
I think it's so helpful that you speak that insight, because you are 100% right. Now there's so much bubbles or shining stars when it comes to, oh my God, someone raised XYZ and it's so exciting on the TechCrunch, all the amazing things. And oftentimes we only see the shining spark. We don't see the truth within that. And we just share is truly incredible, or this is what reality is. Yes, you raise XYZ, but this is maybe the right word you say is this is not the means to the end. Do I say that correctly? This is the end to the, like this is a path to get to the next growth.
Right.
This is not the end goal. You don't just done, like the business still had to keep going. You had to still return the ROI for investors.
Exactly. And yeah, I think you've had previous guests on the show talk about, scaling a company from 0 to 50 people, and scaling a company, let's say 50 to 100, 100 to 500 is different.
100%.
So while the founder may have amazing potential in that initial stage, sometimes they may not be the right person for the next stage.
Yeah.
Or the final stage of whatever it may be. So that's challenging.
So you look at all this distressed company while in part of that venture capital role.
So that was an amazing initial lens into VC.
Was it a little bit scary? Because I imagine you probably have this rainbow and sunshine view about the VC world when you first jump in, and now you look at all the, like those are all the things that could go wrong and you are looking at. And was that discouraging?
I think it allowed me to have a balanced view, because venture capital as a career is something that, a lot of people want to go into.
Yeah. Why is that, you think?
I think it's because they watch, Shark Tank and it looks incredibly fun.
Yeah.
And, you get to evaluate companies and you get to work. And all of that's true. You get to work with amazing entrepreneurs and people who are incredibly brilliant and top of their fields. But a lot of times we lean into kind of the hype cycle, as you mentioned, and our own emotions get better of us. It's more of, especially at the early stage, it's much more of your belief of where you think you can take that company than necessarily any hard metrics. Yeah, you use comps to kind of benchmark yourself.
Do the best. Yeah.
But it's an art piece with just a pencil before it's been written. You're waiting for it to see what the masterpiece would look like.
Yes.
So going in with that lens really allowed me to see the other side of the coin first, and then develop a more balanced perspective about outcomes, if you will, and how they can happen.
So what happened next?
Yeah, so that role in specific allowed me to be much more of an operator. So what happened a lot of times is we'd go in, we'd become the lead investor and we'd recap the company, et cetera. And each one of us, including myself as an analyst, we would take on an operator role in the portfolio company. We would do like 1 or 2 investments per year. So at one point I was, head of HR for a pet retail company that we had invested in.
Oh my God.
And I had no experience in HR and so forth, but it was about building kind of the foundation, and just learning from the operators that I reported into. So that was great. That was a great level of experience at a higher scale than I was used to. And what happened next was one of the partners at the firm ended up starting Simon Property Group's venture fund. Simon Property Group, big mall operator. They own the Domain here in Austin, for example, and several other properties. They started a $100 million venture fund. One of the partners that I worked with joined that and managed that. And then he ended up starting a partnership with Plug and Play. So when I told him that I really want to get into the classic venture capital, I want to be in Silicon Valley, all of that, he's like, you need to go join this firm that's 50 people right now. And I think they're going to, blow up, like meaning grow over time. and you can get an early seat in that. So I did.
Tell us more about that.
Yeah, we were early. So this was 6 years ago. I joined Plug and Play in kind of maybe the initial 50 or so employees. For context, we're about north of 600 now.
Oh my God, so big.
Yeah.
So for our listener who are not familiar with Plug and Play, give us a little more context and then dive into your role.
Yeah, sure. So Plug and Play is kind of two major things. So one is a global venture capital firm. We invest anywhere from $50K up to $2 million into, on average, about 200 or so startups per year.
Wow, that's a huge scale.
Yeah, all over the world. We have about 120 investors on the team that are spread over 17 different verticals. And the performance of those investments have ultimately netted about 32 unicorn valuation companies, $1 billion plus valuation companies, historic players like Dropbox and PayPal, newer players like Honey, Rappi, Ride, which is an autonomous trucking company, and several others. So that's one side of our business. Mm-hmm. The other side of our business is that we are the world's largest corporate innovation platform. Essentially, what we've done is we've created a marketplace, a managed marketplace, whereby large Fortune 1000 companies sit on one end. And that is, I think, roughly 580 or so corporations now.
Okay.
And then the other side, it's entrepreneurs of all different, sizes. It could be a seed stage company, it could be a Series D, Series E company. And what we're essentially doing is creating a platform whereby these different, where these entrepreneurs and these corporations and all the other stakeholders that are involved in the innovation journey can connect and work with one another.
That's so cool. But how is that possible? Like, how?
Yeah. So what we do is we essentially run cohorts of startups. Your average cohort is anywhere from 10 to 20 companies, and like I said, across 17 different verticals.
Yeah.
And then you multiply that by the number of locations, and then on every given year, we're about 2,500 or so companies are going through our programs. And like I said, different sizes. We don't ask for any equity. We don't charge them any fee.
Oh, this is not the investment. This is on the other side of it.
Exactly.
This is completely for free?
Yeah. So for the entrepreneur, it's completely for free. Corporations sponsor the program. And the way that we do it is many to many. So for example, in our InsurTech practice, we work with over 50 insurance companies. They all have a common goal. They want to find amazing startups and technology companies that can help solve some of their key challenges. Wow.
So basically, those corporates come together and say, we are finding the next innovation that come to our field that help us solving the most hardest question, and then they sponsor, and you guys run a cohort. That's brilliant. How long is the cohort? Is that 3 weeks, 3 months?
Yeah, so it's 3 months.
Okay.
The way that we think about where Plug and Play sits is there's some amazing accelerators out there and incubators. Y Combinator, Techstars here in Texas, et cetera. And what they do really well is taking a company from 0 to 1, is building your founding team, getting your initial product out there, et cetera. What we want to do is all the numbers after 1, becoming a global scaling partner.
Oh, so you don't take like early entrepreneur. You take entrepreneur who already maybe find out the product market fit, maybe already have some traction or sort, now helping them from 1 to 10.
Yeah, so we like to invest at the earliest stages, help coach the entrepreneur and to get ready, to be enterprise ready, and then have them involved in our different cohorts so they can scale with large companies.
Got it, but those two sides are not necessarily the same, right? Entrepreneur can join you, but without being invested by you.
Exactly. Yeah, so so that allows the platforms to attract the best startups. And they may not be investment targets for us, but we can help grow their business.
That's incredible. But how are you able to scale? I mean, that's a lot of entrepreneurs at all time, given different location, different vertical. That's a lot of things happening at any given day.
Yeah. So Plug and Play as an institution, we're doing about 400 events per year.
Oh my goodness.
All over the world. In all different geographies.
It's incredible.
I mean, we do it because One, I think it's amazing people. About 600 people that focus on operations, sales, etc.
Wow.
And then about 100 or so, like I said, that are investors that are finding the companies.
Where do you sit?
I sit on both ends. I started on the investor side, but now I'm, helping build our location here in Texas and so forth.
So exciting.
Yeah.
Yay. And when do we expect a location to be ready? And any announcement you want to share with our listeners?
Yeah. So, we're in the preliminary conversation stage, but, hope to launch something kind of in the next 12 to 18 months in an initial location in Texas and grow over time.
What do you want, Kevin? Along the journey, you have really followed your path, right? Whether it's exploring the investment banker role or in the VC world, looking at distressed founders or having your own business throughout the journey. And now it sounds like you are in the, exactly where you wanted to be in that VC and the startup, the circle and supporting founders of the world. Like, is this what you want or is it something else?
No, this is great. I think the current role that I do now is allowing me to be an entrepreneur again. So my role right now is two parts. So one is still to invest in amazing companies. So sitting on our investment committees, helping raise funds and manage them and deploy that capital. So that still kind of exercises that investor side of the brain. And I think on the operator side, it's finding kind of a product market fit for plug and play within Texas, helping build and scale our operations here, hiring an initial team, and then developing a framework that we could potentially take throughout all of kind of the South and Southeast, et cetera. So for me, it allows me to kind of get to that entrepreneurial itch, if you will, that never went away. While also being able to invest and work with such amazing people.
Yeah. How beautiful. And yes, cannot wait to see how everything all gonna shape out in next, 12 to 18 months. And we cannot wait to see the location. With that, Kevin, I'm curious, what impact you want to leave on this planet? If all that's over, say 100 years from now, we're all gonna be long gone. What is the impact you want to leave on this planet?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think if I can be known as a facilitator of opportunity, that if the people that I've been able to touch throughout life can point to a specific moment where maybe it was an introduction I made or hopefully a kind thing I said or some feedback I gave, and that allowed them to have some shift in their lives the same way, that restaurant manager had a shift in my life.
I was just thinking about that. So beautiful. It comes full circles.
That I think is a fulfilling life. Even having a small aspect in someone else's life that led to the growth that they are. That is really important to me to kind of develop and become kind of a wholly rounded individual. So if I can do that in a meaningful way and lead to some opportunity for other people, that's a valuable life for me.
So beautiful. I love that. Everything's all come together where now you are paying it forward and share those kindness that you're receiving early on to others who are maybe need that light at this moment of their career.
Hopefully.
I'm curious, Kevin, what do you think is your superpower?
My superpower. I've been thinking about this a lot, actually. I think for me, personally speaking, getting an executive coach is very helpful in kind of identifying some of these things. My superpower, I think, is just being incredibly organized.
Did not expect that.
Yeah. If I try to think of things that I'm really good at, I think there are people that are have really great technical expertise and have an amazing way to be kind of operationally amazing. But what often I see as an opportunity is kind of the basics, is following up with people, having detailed ways to reach out and connect and make people feel empowered in their roles. So simple things that I do, for example, I have an Excel sheet of people I've met throughout life. And if they've shared an interesting fact, I try to mark it down when I get home or whatever it may be. And then if I know I'm going to go see them again, I just revisit that Excel sheet.
And that's yours.
I'm sorry?
Are
Yeah.
you being serious? That's
Yeah.
insane. Wait,
Yeah.
just generally speaking, how big is a sales sheet? Like, is it 10,000 people? Is it 2,000 people?
No, it's like a couple hundred. It's mainly professional life.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
I was like,
Yeah.
wow, there's a lot of people.
Yeah. And I just try to note it down, and then sometimes try to remember it. But if you don't, you can always refer back. And then if you're going to go see them again, people really appreciate if you brought up something that last time they talked to you, you bring that up. People remembering people's birthdays, remember to follow up on an email after a phone call with some action items, having an Asana dashboard. These are things that I think that the average person can do, but maybe not doesn't do, or, and that's where I found my success. Investing in some of the unicorns that we've been able to back was largely based on the follow-up, was based on kind of being the right person at the right time with those companies, outside of all the intuition and thesis and stuff that we do.
You're so intentional, Kevin. It's not just a task. I feel like you treat it as like every human being deserves a moment that you truly seeing them as who they are. And like you said, having a spreadsheet is not the hardest thing, but having that discipline to commit to that, you know what, I'm going to remember you, I'm going to see you, and I would love to support you however I can. With that mindset and that sincerity, I believe that's one of the reasons that why you are one of the VC leaders that people say, wow, like it'll be honored if we can support, get to collaborate with Kevin. Or many other, among all other term sheets, they want to say yes to you.
Maybe. I hope so. I think my role in venture capital and kind of what has led to where I am today has been quite a lot of being a normal person.
What do you mean by that?
I think that...
who is not a normal person, first and foremost?
So let me clarify that. So I think venture capital, let's say partners, et cetera, some of them are incredibly intimidating. They're super accomplished people, right?
Of course.
Founders of amazing companies and so forth. And it's sometimes hard to relate to them. So my strategy has always been to, just present who I am, but not in kind of an ostentatious or non-friendly manner.
You're always the most friendly person I met in the room. You are so grounded and sincere. Whenever I meet you in events or today's conversation, either just a 2 seconds hello, goodbye, or talking to you, you just have that sincerity that really comes through.
Thank you. I think I got it from my mom.
She's a nurse.
And really
she takes care of people.
Yeah. No, and honestly, it didn't come without learning, right? Like, I think when you get a role where you're a VC, if you will, and there's a certain arrogance that I definitely had early on, right? And you quickly realize that, that arrogance will get you nowhere.
That's huge self-awareness because not many people can see that.
Well, trial by error, right? I wish I could say I'm this all kind of wise guru, but I'm not. It's just learning through your own mistakes, learning through the relationships that you wish you could have handled better, or the conversations you could have handled better. And luckily, the people in your life that are willing to give you direct and frank feedback and say, "Hey, I really didn't like how you approached that," or you could have done that aspect differently, and then noting it somewhere. And then
in that spreadsheet.
And for me, it's
different tab.
Spreadsheets and notes and stuff like that. But whatever system works for other people.
I made fun of it because I'm truly admire that discipline. Like, oh my God. Think about a spreadsheet. I understand the concept, but the fact that you write down every single thing I cannot do it. Though I'm a huge note taker. I have like multiple journals. I took different notes, meetings, but I never look at them. I just never look at them afterwards. I just take it.
It's things that you walk, okay, let's say you mentioned, hey, I'm really excited. Like if I said, how are you doing?
Yeah.
And you said, oh, I'm in a good mood. My birthday is tomorrow. So then what I would just go home is write down that your birthday is tomorrow. And then next year or tomorrow, I would obviously shoot you an email or a text or whatever, maybe saying happy birthday. But then a year from now, I'd also do that. And then a year from that. And things like that.
Always?
Yeah, generally.
Even people you have not talked to for 2, 3, 5 years professionally?
That would be kind of crazy of emailing and texting everyone. It's more so like if there's a conversation to be had.
Yeah.
Sometimes you just do lose connections with people. I'm not saying I can maintain thousands of relationships, but there's no harm in noting down and then choosing later if you want to stay in touch or if there's a reason to stay in touch.
I love that. I think oftentimes cool things are simple, but not always easy. And I think the way how you show up, how you sincerely want to connecting with one another, it sounds simple, but it's definitely not easy. And I think therefore that's, one of the reasons that you are such a leader at what you do, because I think you are the people leader. Just like your mom, serving the patient of the world, you are serving the community of the world, who are founders, who are innovators, who are VCs of the world. They all want to come to you when the question or collaboration and such. And the fact that you can show up so powerfully, confidently, but so, like you said, being a person, so grounded and so sincerity. And that's why people felt connected to you. They felt they've been seen. They can be truth to you.
Thank you. Still learning. We'll see.
We all are learning progress, right?
Right.
And with that, Kevin, I'm curious, for our founders of the world listening to this episode and for he or she, maybe understand about VC world, but maybe not as much as you would. What would you tell our founders? A few things that most people don't know about VC world that will be helpful for them to understand.
Oh, sure.
Because a lot of them have this huge oh my God, the VC, the God of the world, right? They have a big box, right? What do you want to share with them?
Yeah, sure. There was a lot of learnings that I've had as a VC that I didn't have when I was a founder.
Yeah.
So one, I think, is I try to think of what motivates the other person that is talking to me. VCs, it's fairly obvious, are focused on returns, but understanding who they ultimately report into, which is their limited partners, their investors, is helpful. Understanding who their limited partners are and what those limited partners' underlying goals are and missions, et cetera. Of course, it's still financial return, but there may be other aspects. And then, understanding kind of the life cycle of that fund. So, for example, if it's a freshman fund, meaning a brand new fund.
Freshman.
Yeah.
Love the name.
They are, largely focused on deploying that capital, preferably at an accelerated rate.
Define that.
Yeah. So most funds have what's called a deployment period.
Which is how long?
Usually anywhere from 3 to 6 years. So let's make up a hypothetical. Let's say you have a $100 million fund. And let's say you're reserving $20 million for follow-on capital. So you have about 80 or so million that you want to deploy in, let's say, 4 years. And generally, what a lot of VC managers will do is try to deploy that 80 million at an accelerated rate in the first 2 years, so that in the event of an early exit, they can take the proceeds of that capital and then reinvest within the deployment period. So that may indicate to you of kind of their level of eagerness, depending on what life cycle they are on their fund.
How would you know that? Do you ask that?
You just ask how old the fund is, how long and that usually kind of indicates when the deployment started.
Okay. But if they say, well, our VC fund established since 2010.
Right. So then that's a different world because now they have likely overlapping funds that they can invest out of.
But not necessary, right?
Not necessarily.
And that's okay to ask that question without being lewd,
No, I think it's totally normal to understand where the fund sits.
You can just ask, where does the fund sit today?
Yeah, like how many funds do you have? And then an established firm will have dozens or have had dozens. And they're very willing to say, oh, we'd invest in your company out of our newest fund, this, et cetera. Or maybe between these two or whatever it may be. So that's totally fine. I think understanding that motivator.
That's huge, yeah.
Of where they're looking to deploy and what they like to.
So what happened after the accelerated period? Because in that hypothetical example, for the first 2 years, right, you want to accelerate the investment. And then hopefully in that 4 years, the goal is deploy the entire 80 mil. Once that happens, What's next for the fund?
Yeah. So for usually what's happening in year 3, maybe even in year 2, is you're out raising your second fund. If you're just starting.
If that's the case, they don't have time to deploy the capital.
Yeah, and that's kind of, you know how like, and maybe your listeners will know your VC has like 30 minutes and they got to go to the next one and stuff like that. So a lot of times is what's happening is if you're a small fund, you're both raising and deploying at the same time.
Wow.
The same way entrepreneurs are both burning cash while also raising.
Yeah.
So in a lot of senses, there is, some common links. Your limited partners, let's say on Fund 2, when you're out raising Fund 2, are still likely investing on the thesis that you came in on Fund 1 and whatever logic you came in with that. But then on Fund 3, now that it's been roughly let's say 5 or so years, when you're talking to those LPs, now you have some metrics that you can point to on Fund 1. So you're always thinking about how to optimize your dollar, if you will, on those initial funds. While also raising capital, et cetera. So
wow, being organized is helpful.
Yeah. So that
Incredible.
is kind of, and more established funds have different people that raise capital, and different people that, let's say, that only source companies and so forth. But if you're working with a smaller fund, let's say an initial fund size of 10 or even 50 million, they likely are just a group of partners that are excited about investing in companies, and therefore will have to do both at the same time.
Wow, that's interesting to learn that. So for our founders, who are maybe in the process of raising maybe this year or next, what advice you will share with them?
Yeah, I think this is the year of unit economics. We're seeing that across the board.
Does it matter what sector?
No, I don't think it necessarily matters which sector. I think we are seeing some kind of hype topics where revenue doesn't matter and technology is more important. The way that I kind of almost look at VC analysis is a bit of a pendulum. That sometimes that pendulum swings in the form of kind of a hype cycle, and you need to invest in anything and anyone that's hitting a topic that you're interested in. And then it swings back entirely into kind of an overcorrection. Invest in like the greatest unit economics businesses and so forth.
Where are we sitting in that?
I think we lean towards the latter right now, where we are seeing a hesitancy, especially at the pre-seed and seed stage, where investors are highly hesitant to invest in a pre-revenue, pre-product business.
So what should we do if you are pre-revenue, pre-all that at this stage?
So I think it's one is think scrappy, right? How much can you develop before you need outside capital? And then kind of the question before that is your business actually venture backable?
I define that for our listeners.
Right. So, and this kind of goes back to the thinking of the lens of your investor. Your VC has pressure and a mandate and a kind of responsibility to return capital, let's say in a 8 to 10 year window, right? So that investor is evaluating each company will this produce a, let's say, at a pre-seed deal of 100x return or more for me.
There's a lot of pressure.
Right. So for you, it's what do I want, let's say my company that's worth 5 million today to be worth 500 million? Yeah. And do I see a path to that logically in 7 to 10 years? And if not, then it's the next question is, well, what type of VC do I need to kind of attract, right? Because perhaps I can build a business to the seed stage or to the Series A stage where I have unit economics, and now that VC is looking at different exit multiples. Your valuation's higher, right, because you've built out progress and so forth, but the expectations are different. And the second thing is, do you want governance? Do you want, do you want an investor to kind of be telling you and, critiquing your business? A lot of times it can be healthy. And, we believe that the best founders are coachable and helpable. But again, it may not be for your business. So the last thing is that it's expensive. We learned this in finance that equity is always more expensive than debt. and giving up, let's say, 20% of your company to an outside investor obviously reduces your share. So is VC relevant for you?
Yeah.
And I think where this was most important was the sector I used to invest in quite heavily in was direct-to-consumer brands, where we saw kind of the rise and fall of that. Like, let's say, the Caspers of the world and other Warby Parker and several others that would raise at SaaS-like valuations, but not be able to achieve those metrics in any kind of reasonable time period. So they would have, like what we were referring to earlier, recaps and down rounds and all these other things that would materially affect their company. So that's something I would consider if I was an entrepreneur in today's climate. Is should I get venture funding, and if so, how much can I do kind of on a scrappy limitation? I think you need to have signs of product market fit in today's day. That any inclination, right? It could just be kind of a mature conversation. Would love to see traction, but I mean that might be the case. Having any kind of example of that is super important now. And then lastly is, there's still a huge focus on talent. That, if you are able, I think when we evaluate founders at such an early stage, is that founder able to kind of attract others that are of high caliber? Meaning, are they able to kind of communicate their vision in such a way that brings on really exciting people onto it? And maybe they have to leave some great paying jobs or whatever it may be to be part of that vision. Because that will be an indicator of likely how they're going to raise financing rounds, attract other great people to the company as they scale, et cetera. And you got to be the first salesperson at your company.
Yeah, I love that. Wow, Kevin, so much packed knowledge and insight that I feel a lot of founders are not, going to learn that otherwise. So thank you for being so honest and transparent as a VC leader of the world. My last question, Kevin, is what does American dreams mean for you?
Yeah. So I shared kind of some notes about my family, but just to kind of give some more context. So both of my parents, my dad never graduated college. He did his associate's degree. And then worked in, like I said, a warehouse. And he's kind of gone through the ranks there. My mom was able to find nursing as an early passion and go through that, but then also moved to the U.S. And for them, the American dream was having disposable income. The ability to, let's say, go out to a restaurant, not even a nice restaurant, just a restaurant once a month. And I think the interesting thing that happens with kind of generations is the American dream kind of compounds, that your vision becomes slightly larger and kind of what you can achieve. So I've been blessed with the great education system, with parents that are able to see kind of the value of their hard work, but also see the opportunity that lies by living here. So for me, the American dream is accessing those opportunities that are built into the foundation of kind of the ecosystem here, and capitalizing on them. While also hopefully giving back to your community and setting up the infrastructure for others to succeed.
Wow. So beautiful. See how everything all come together and seeing your parent generation, how they see about American dream. And today you're able to take all the resources and you stand on the giant shoulder and allowed you to not only grow and learn, but today giving back to people maybe in the same journey of rising. And so beautiful. So Kevin, I want to sincerely thank you for being here. Thank you for being so open and so authentic and share everything that, not only your journey, but also your insight, your take about what made life so great. So truly, I am so honored. I am so inspired. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Wen. This is great.
Thank you so much, everybody, for tuning in today. I hope you all enjoy this show as much as I do. And I cannot wait to see you all next week. Bye, guys.